Why didn't we dam up Yosemite too?
Yeah.
Why didn't we dam up Yosemite Valley? Mulholland wanted to do that. The guy who built the Los Angeles Aqueduct. He absolutely he told what was the first MPS guy Horace Albright. He told Albright, he's like,
yeah,
what I would do is I'd take pictures of the whole valley and get them to make beautiful pictures and send them to every museum in the country, and then I'd dam the valley up and build a dam from end to end. And
hello everyone, this is Keith Runyon and welcome back to A Future on Wax and Wings. I'm really excited today to bring you the voice of Obi Kaufmann, artist, poet, naturalist, and author of the best-selling California Field Atlas. Obi and I met while at a conference on environmental education in Northern California. I was just blown away by his intellectual fluency and visionary view for the future of our natural world. Today's conversation, like Obi himself, treks a wide swath of territory. Stick around to hear about Obi's childhood adventures in Los Padres National Forest, his thoughts on the nature of art and aesthetic arrest, how LA might have greener water policies than San Francisco, the psychosis of our industrial alienation, our discussion of concurrent parallels in the evolution of human consciousness, and the ways that we need to rewrite our myths and reframe our social, societal narrative from one of endless growth to one of circularity, restoration, and reciprocity with the adaptive cycles of nature. It's on the subject of story that we will push the conversation forward as we investigate today's theme, charting myth across the Anthropocene. Obi, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Keith. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate your kind words there, too. That was very generous.
So, Obi, you were born to two scientist parents.
yeah.
And one was an astrophysicist, I believe, and one was a psychologist.
Yeah.
One might say you were cradled between the personal and the infinite.
Whoa. Yeah.
How, as a young boy, did you find your way towards those things in between?
Yeah, that's a great question. Way to start. I haven't been in Santa Cruz in a long time. I'm continually astounded by the depth and variety that California represents to me. My own cosmos, right? That's what my father put in my head so many decades ago, that the cosmos was not only investigatable but apprehendable. I'm not sure if it is apprehendable. That's a thought that can wake me up in the middle of the night sometimes, that let alone the cosmos at large, but even just ecological understanding, a full apprehension of ecosystem workings being such complex systems that might it be that the capacity of the human mind, having evolved on the African savanna over the past 5-6 million years, is not wired to fully probe the mysteries of ecology, cosmology, physical reality on an objective level that is translatable in any digestible form towards whatever sort of information systems that we are employing to tell the narrative and present it. So I think back to one moment when I think I was about 8 years old, and I was sitting in a car with my parents, and I don't remember the exact context of the conversation that we were having, but in my sort of perfect 8-year-old mind, the kind of mind I'm always looking to go back towards. Now here in my middle 40s, I asked, where is truth in the universe? And my parents both replied simultaneously in a knee-jerk fashion towards their respective vocations. My father said physics. My mother said psychology, which was a moment that we still laugh about to this day because they remember it too. Because we had a good laugh then at that moment. If I, as an adult, were sitting there next to the 8-year-old me and had a voice that I could contribute to answer that question, I think I would have a third answer that gets to the nature of my discourse study in this adult career that I've invented. I would say story. That is where truth is, as far as it relates to meaning within how humanity can interact with an objective reality, not being an interaction with that objective reality, but rather being connected and engaged and participating with it through our evolutionarily endowed ability to tell, invent, create story.
Yeah.
So that's almost an answer. And as we talk here, Keith, you're going to see that I'm kind of like there's almost like a circular quality to my narration. So I'll go out way far out. You got to follow me around the block, but eventually we'll get back to something resembling an answer. Or we won't.
Yeah. I'll get either way. So I want to move forward with that. You just talked about how we find truth in story. And I'm wondering, like for you, out on Mount Diablo as a kid, growing up into your teenage years, what's the tale of that kid that came out and found his own truth out here?
Still finding my truth. You know, I mean, my relationship to those early days growing up on Mount Diablo, interacting with tarantulas, marveling at the nature of the coyote as opposed to the domestic dog nature that we are all familiar with as humans, marveling at the smell of the buckeye blossom, running through sage mazes, the black sage and coastal sagebrush, climbing waterfalls. Mount Diablo represents an adventure in my mind. All that childhood stuff, all that Huckleberry Finn stuff that maybe the Mississippi River represented to that character, the Mount Diablo represented to me. A whole universe wrapped up. So I am always returning to that story, that place in my mind that I am. It's not a static thing. It isn't something that happened to me. It's something that is alive and continues to evolve in my own personal mythology.
Right. Yeah.
You know, so when I'm asked about my relationship to that mountain, or when I'm asked about how where this inspiration for my own career comes from, and how that I'm always going back to that place, and to get to your question about the nature of story as far as like how that influenced me, I think to further elaborate on how I can relate to my time on the mountain. It wasn't until I got to college at UC Santa Barbara when I was scampering around the mountains of the Santa Ynez Mountains in the Los Padres National Forest. Yeah. There are thousands of art sites left by the Chumash, whose pictographs, a portfolio so rich, so historically dense, it makes them the painters of indigenous California. I mean, hands down. They have this whole societal language that is, for the most part, experientially lost due to the 16th and 17th, 18th century genocide of those people. But most of these art sites are not documented, not on any kind of map. You have to go out and you have to pull the long, overgrown Manzanita ceanothus brush away from these paintings to reveal like 20, 30-foot condors that are painted, adjacent to eclipses or wildflowers that represent almost some sort of historical or mythologically cosmological histo-narrative that I don't understand because I don't have the cultural context, but I understand on a level that's very difficult to put into terms that aren't emotive of some sort of willful letting go, jettisoning of left brain linear thinking that resonate with me back to my relationship with Mount Diablo growing up as a young kid and thinking about how regardless of academic understanding, I have this connection that is that gets almost to like the aesthetic experience of transcendence and immanence. I don't want to be too romantic about it, but I really believe that the aesthetic experience of arrest, this moment when I'm being sold nothing, right? Which is I am there. I am there as the eye of the universe perceiving the thing of the universe.
I love how you are connecting truth with story. Memory is episodic. Our minds evolve to experience through story. The story of the Chumash and the encounter with truth or arrest that represented for you, it gets back to the central narrative or theme of our talk today as we start building that narrative, as we chart myth, the cultural stories that connect us, that drive and have driven the modern paradigm into the Anthropocene. How do you see your role in guiding the ship through these turbulent waters?
Thank you. I like your use of the word myth. As I understand it, Keith, which you're using the word myth almost as like the societal glue, right? The fictional stuff that holds us together and keeps us all in the same direction, going in the same direction. Is that what you mean by myth?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Exactly. The societal glue.
Yeah, the societal glue. I think that works. The guy who I know, well, actually, the guy who I think most people associate with the word myth is Joseph Campbell, who said that a myth is true. Myths are always true in that they point to the idea of realized human potential for a given culture at a given time. So I like that idea because for so many people, the word myth means lie. It's a myth that something happens, and I think that is an important distinction. And I think that myths really lie in the truth of myth lies in metaphor. And I don't know if a lot of people know what a metaphor is. I think that when you start talking about X, Y, or Z mythology, and you really have to get it straight what a metaphor is. Like Johnny runs so fast, they say that Johnny runs like a deer. That's not a metaphor. The metaphor is that Johnny is a deer. So that is a really important point to make, where you have this, where you have to get the denotation and the connotation right. We're not talking about the thing itself. We're talking about what the thing represents. And in that way, like when I talk about Mount Diablo, the place where I grew up and cut my teeth as an artist and a naturalist, the Mount Diablo was, for me, Mount Diablo was the cosmos. I found that the whole world was found there. And by looking at that place, the whole world was revealed to me. And so that's the same kind of thing that I have with the subject. Now I've expanded a little bit to include all of California. But California is a stand-in for looking at nature in general. And it's not really so much about humans looking at nature. It's about me as one single individual. It's about my attitude. And I think by digging into that single voice, I've managed to, my book has gained some purchase in the popular culture here locally, that it's like a seed gains purchase, I mean to say. Like the book found some fertile ground here because people are identifying with that journey that I have on a very personal level. And I think that if I've managed to do a thing, and as I go forward into my next books, what I'm doing is I am describing how I see nature. And seeing nature is all I do creatively and professionally. So on some level, the books aren't even about California. The books are about me. And I think that is an inroad into a greater understanding of connection, as people are resonating with that idea of my identity as a child of California. California is not a material thing for my exploitation. It is actually the thing from which all of my voice sings.
Yeah, well, you're an artist and at heart, I think, in many ways.
Right.
And I think that the way that, you don't know necessarily how art doesn't have motive in the same way that a policymaker has motive. Right? All artists have intentions, usually. Not always.
No, we're getting into aesthetic theory
behind their art. Yeah, but I'd say at some level it's meant to elicit something internal rather than stay at this kind of surface cognitive level of, I believe this and you believe that. And maybe through that internal change, make people more aware of how they can,
Yeah. Okay. That's well said, Keith. I like that. Yeah. I think that, I believe that the greatest author of the 20th century, well, I've got a couple of them. I'd put Wallace Stegner up there too. I really sort of live in Wallace Stegner's California. Angle of Repose. Check out that book.
Yeah,
it's fantastic. He was all the little live things. There's so many good books. Wallace Stegner's California. So good. Anyway, I'm not talking about Wallace Stegner right now. I'm talking about James Joyce, my other favorite.
Okay, sure.
James Joyce, 20th century Irish author. He wrote a little book called Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. And this book is the best encapsulation of aesthetic theory that I believe has ever been made by a human on Earth.
Say it one more time. What's the name of the guy?
James Joyce.
James Joyce.
Awesome. Yeah. He wrote Ulysses and Finnegan's Wake, and he's widely regarded as one of the greatest novelists of the 20th century. Portrait of the Artist, a Young Man is a thin little book, but among other things, he describes how art works. But one of the things that he talks about is, like, you can basically take a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle, and on one side you got proper art, and then you have improper art. Improper art is anything that moves you to desire.
Yeah.
He calls it pornography. You see a billboard with lady with teeth that look like refrigerators or something. Oh, I want that refrigerator.
Yeah.
Pornography.
Yeah, right.
That is not art.
Right.
That is improper art.
Yeah. So do you feel like that's really possibly the most foundational of all those building blocks, is just that sense that you're not a part in the universe, but of the universe?
Oh, that's
perhaps.
Good. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I like that idea of something that approaches atonement, right? Where the eye of the universe perceives the thing of the universe, and together this aesthetic arrest happens. I really believe in the power of the aesthetic, the power of the aesthetic experience. I was asked recently about an example in my book where I call for the restoration of Hetch Hetchy Valley as a great opportunity for us to express our deeper character in alignment with the value of restoration, replenishment, core beliefs, and going forward with this new kind of ethos. And an interviewer asked me, "Isn't that just an aesthetic thing? I mean, do you want to restore the valley just because it's beautiful?" As if dismissing the aesthetic experience. And I believe that a good comeback to that kind of posture might be, well, then what is Yosemite Valley? Its sister valley. Like, is that just an aesthetic experience? Why don't we damn that one too? Like Mulholland wanted to do after he was done with the Owens Valley. He wanted to dam the Merced River inside the Yosemite Valley. Because that is quite a bit of waste if you're thinking of that sort of Bureau of Reclamation mentality of wasting water is letting water get away, so to say. So there is this deep connection to nature that is accessible through the aesthetic experience. This thing that I don't want to necessarily sequester the aesthetic experience as some sort of transcendent experience, or maybe some sort of romantic capital R experience, because I believe that also is not fair or even relevant in most modern contexts, as if the romance is sort of an idealism. It's a thing that doesn't really apply in what you call the Anthropocene, where all parts of nature have been touched by the human presence and the human industry. So if that's the case, if we are active in all aspects of the natural world, how do we reconcile that within our hearts in a very real world kind of way, not some way that idealizes or romanticizes nature as something that should be left alone because it's pristine. In fact, pristine is an ingenuous idea, because nothing now ultimately is pristine.
Yeah. What other cultural baggage or stories do you think we need to get rid of?
We have this economic paradigm of endless growth that our society is built on. That Western, Eastern, whatever, global society at this point is built on this idea of if you're not growing, you're dying, which is false. And it's false because nature doesn't work like that at all. Nature works in circles and cycles. And the historic arrogance that we are representing over the past 300 years towards that end, that nature is something other than a cycle.
Yeah. That
it is just endlessly growing. I mean, we're finding that out on all kinds of scales of levels now. A painting, a Chumash painting, a watercolor painting of a mallard duck, presents a story without a beginning or an end. It's a circular story, and it's a closed system. There is an apprehendability there that suggests everything you need to know about that subject in that enclosed system between the aesthetic, the academic, the beautiful, the apprehendable. And that's what I get to in my maps as well. So I built the structure of the California Field Atlas without a beginning and an end. Now, it's a field atlas. A field atlas is a genre that does not exist. I made it up.
Yeah.
You know? Yep. And so I don't, there's not there's just a couple of roads in there, but I don't really tell anybody how to get or go anywhere. I don't really tell anybody where anything is.
Yeah.
Which, I'm glad you agree with me. I think that's a particularly contentious point, especially for something calling itself an atlas.
Right. Yeah.
So, but if you want a road atlas, go get a road atlas. This has a different function. I'm not really concerned with the where of things. I'm concerned with the how of things, right? These big living systems, earth, air, fire, and water. And although I have chapters 1 through 10, chapter 1 being Unfolding California and chapter 10 being The Rewilded California, what I imagine there is a snake eating its own tail, a circle where both systems are equivocal on some level. So chapters 2, 3, 4, and 5 are the elemental chapters. We've got earth and mountains, water and rivers, fire and forests, and wind and weather. And then we have some parks and protection and the deserts, because the deserts are technically outside of California. They're inside our political boundaries, but they're technically outside of the California floristic province, which is the entity, the hyperobject that I see and define California as being, as defined by the backbone of California, the Sierra Nevada.
Yeah.
And so I really like the idea of this circular narration, to get back to that idea again, like I'm doing right now, where ultimately we're talking about a motif, a literary structure to tell a different kind of story. And that is what I'm getting to in my new book, which I hope we can start talking about, which
Speaking of cycles.
Right. What is the story, man? What's the story?
Yeah. Well, let's dive into those books. You've said that you could paint 100 maps a day for the rest of your life and still have more story to tell. So, given an average lifespan of 78.69 years, that gives you 11,858 days and just over a million maps left to go.
You did
on
the math.
page. All morbidity aside, how'd you come to develop this deep and unbridled infatuation?
Yeah, now I've got my whole life flashing before my eyes. Thanks for that math. Yeah. Yeah, I better get to work. What am I doing? I don't have time to talk. I kid. I joke. I like the media, the story that maps tell, right? It's a non-narrative story, much like a painting, right? No beginning, no end. It's all laid out, almost outside the realm of time. I guess that's what I'm talking about as far as the hyperbolic proverbial speak that you took very literally about how much story there is to tell. The idea is that California is spatially so rich with its living systems that right now, right here, is a snapshot of eternity laid out in all directions for my continued investigation.
So I got a deal with my excellent little publisher out of Berkeley, Heyday Books, for what will ultimately be 6 books.
Yeah.
So California Field Atlas is the first, and State of Water is necessarily the second. And now let me explain what the next books are going to be after the State of Water, and a picture might begin to develop. So State of Water is the second book. 3rd, 4th, and 5th books in the series are going to be a trilogy called the California Lands Trilogy. And that is the forests of California, the coasts of California, and the 5th book will be the deserts of California. So I'm on this long journey into... I was going to say natural history, but I'd like to say something like post-natural history. I don't think that's an expression yet. Oh, you just gave me a funny look there. I just pulled that out of my butt. So I'll have to investigate that before I use it again.
Post-natural history.
Post-natural history, because there are we'll get into that in a minute. But let me finish my thought here about my 6 books, my epic narrative, my Game of Thrones of California's natural world, because I think that's kind of what I'm doing. Given the amount of characters, the amount of character deaths, the amount of cliffhangers, the amount of drama that I'm engaging. So that's the California Lands trilogy. That'll be coming out in the next couple of years. And then my final book is going to bookend The State of Water, and it'll be called The State of Fire. Where, how, and why California burns.
Right.
And so The State of Water, I needed to make my second book before I could go into the California Lands trilogy, because I needed to figure this out for me. I needed to investigate the large and, frankly, elegant math problem that water infrastructure across California represents in the year 2019 or 2018 when I wrote the book. I am fascinated by it. This single most altered aspect of our topography, California's water. We have done a number on this place, and I am getting right with that. And what I mean by that is I need to decide, and I needed to decide before I wrote this book on this potentially most contentious of all issues in our extended human community across the state. I needed to get right with my voice. And what I mean by that is that I am not a policymaker. Not really interested in a lot of policy.
Yeah.
I am not a pundit. I'm not going to be sitting on some talk show saying this is how farmers should farm. Oh boy, am I not going to do that. I am not a lawyer. That gets back to that policy idea.
Yeah.
I would say that I'm not even really a scientist. Now, I have a particular relationship to that word scientist, as we discussed at the beginning of this conversation with my father and mother, who are both scientists. And my work does not exist in the realm of peer review. Which is funny, because it's a book. But I have a great team of editors at Heyday, and it goes through expert review. But as far as science goes, I think that there is enough influence of the humanities as being another inroad to knowledge within these books that would put it outside the realm of science. Now, all of this map and all these maps and all of this work is absolutely data driven, and for its size at only 144 pages, the State of Water has like 10 times the amount of cited sources that the California Field Atlas has. It's just because every sentence has a footnote, because it has to. If I'm presenting knowledge and I'm presenting numbers and I'm presenting where I'm getting if I'm presenting these numbers, I have to present where I'm getting these numbers, right? So that's very important to me, and I want to show up to that level of responsibility that the Field Atlas didn't quite require. And going back, and the next books are going to kind of, there'll be a balance. There'll be a balance, because I'm encountering now that I'm discussing more straight up biological systems. Like, for example, in the forests of California, I do need to really get some specifics right. A lot of specifics, right? Yeah. So it's not just the boy in the forest, which I think is a lot of the attitude that comes across in the California Field Atlas. Just this guy wandering around, and because that's what I did. And then I've got mountains and rivers and that kind of thing. But when you're really talking about the functionality of ecosystems in California, and frankly, considering the modicum of success that the California Field Atlas has garnered over the past couple of years, there's a much bigger spotlight You know, it's not just, I wonder how the field atlas might have been different in like some sort of like Heisenbergian kind of way, you know, like sort of like I've been influenced by the spotlight a little bit, you know, and how if I had a bigger spotlight on me then, how would it have changed, you know, because you can't look at something without changing it.
Right.
So, so that sort of describes my voice going into this book, the state of water, right? So that is my attitude. I described what I'm not. If I were to describe what I am, I think I've kind of already done that, you know, with the artist and the painter and but I am also a guy who sees an ethical dimension to all this. And I do put that forward.
Right. Yeah. Well, let's dive into some specifics. What might be an example of that?
I would like to point out that in California, we waste, in the urban sector, we waste about 30% of the food that is delivered to our cities.
Yeah, no, it's
and that's
crazy.
Like grocery
food
stores,
waste.
Schools, restaurants. I mean, just name it. Like 30% of the food goes away. So if you're telling me that the agricultural sector last year used 34 million acre feet of water to make this food,
right,
and urban use wasted 30% of that food.
Right.
Is that then 9 million acre feet of water? Is that then 3 Shasta dams worth of water that we just turned to dust? So these are very complex systems.
Yep.
And I just threw out that clumsy statistic to point out the depth to which these numbers are manipulable for political ends. That get to a story that there's 2 kinds of Californians. There's not. We are all not afraid of hard work, and we have some tough decisions and we have some tough fights ahead. But I would like to suggest that if we have just the numbers on the table, we can start there. We can start with what are we actually talking about? We're talking about the end of big dams. We got a couple going in. We got one going in down the street, Pacheco.
Yeah.
This is you guys got an interesting situation, not importing your water here.
Yep.
Along the bay.
Yeah.
So that idea that we can look at this in a, how about this word? Democratic sense.
Yeah.
You know? Civil. It's tough, you know. There's so much history here in California. You know, they say that, like, for example, Los Angeles will always get its water. That's like an axiom, right?
Right.
They'll steal it fair and square. You know,
I mean,
that's the history of
the
California water. Well, that's what you get when you build a megapolis
in a desert.
Yeah, 150 miles from the nearest fresh water. You know, like it was a real estate scheme from the beginning, or it can be argued that it was. You know, but San Francisco had no water when we started there too, and now we've got a reservoir in Yosemite National Park,
right? And
we've had it for 100 years. Can you imagine if Los Angeles had a reservoir in Yosemite National Park? You think San Franciscans would be okay with that? And you know what? Frankly, I will challenge San Francisco all day long. You say you're the greenest city in the world? You are not.
Yeah.
Los Angeles is greener than you in so many regards, especially when it comes to water conservation.
Right. Yeah. Speak to that.
Right.
We definitely have people listening from the SF Bay Area.
right.
Let them know how it is.
Oh, they love that dam. Yeah. That O'Shaughnessy Dam in Hetch Hetchy Valley. It's a beautiful dam.
Yeah.
It is.
But let it be free. Let's let the sun hit the bottom of Hetch Hetchy, as you say in the book. You know.
Right. Yeah. That's a dream. Is that value purely aesthetic? as we talked about in the beginning of this conversation, what value is then aesthetics? Are we talking about the restored intrinsic value of a place that is... Why didn't we dam up Yosemite too? Yeah. Why didn't we dam up Yosemite Valley? Mulholland wanted to do that. The guy who built the Los Angeles Aqueduct. He absolutely he told what was the first MPS guy Horace Albright. He told Albright, he's like, what I would do is I'd take pictures of the whole valley and get them to make beautiful pictures and send them to every museum in the country, and then I'd dam the valley up and build a dam from end to end and end all that waste. He didn't want to see the Merced free flowing. Yeah, because it's a perfect place for a dam. It is. It's a perfect place for a reservoir.
Granite walls, hardest granite in the world. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's
so San Francisco owns Hetchachi.
Yeah.
That's why it's still there. We have another reservoir right down river. It's called Don Pedro. Mm-hmm. Has enough room for all that water.
Yeah.
And they get energy from those power plants up there too. Although it has been determined that without O'Shaughnessy Dam, the power would not be dramatically affected. Right. I think San Francisco and the surrounding areas get something like 20 or 30% of their power from hydroelectric on the Tuolumne, something like that. I can't remember that exact statistic, but it's somewhere in that vicinity. But Don Pedro Dam is not owned by San Francisco. That's a different water district, and so this is where my book doesn't get into policy.
Yeah.
That's human crap. That is little boys saying, well, this is business. Okay. So I don't understand business. I don't understand. Get over yourselves. Get over your greed, and let's figure this out. Let's work for the greater good. Again, here's this word, democratic. How about that? How about living in a democracy? How about the real story getting out? But San Franciscans love that dam. I don't know why it's such a great. Well, I do know why. It's a beautiful dam, and we own it, and it's easy, and it's all fine right now. Even though we're constantly working on infrastructure upgrades. But San Francisco doesn't recycle their water nearly as much as Los Angeles. Oh well, Los Angeles is working towards 100%. Wastewater recycling in the next 20 years.
Right. Yeah.
15 years.
Yeah.
And San Francisco just dumps it into the bay. Lots of pollution.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's treated and then dumped in the bay, but it's tough on the living systems there in that very fragile estuary that has enough problems. And it's like you ask people most of the time about water in California. I think most people, it's like, well, it rains. Then something happens, and then it comes out of my tap. It's an incredibly complex system.
Yeah.
And there are no easy answers, but that's fine. We're not looking for easy answers. We'll work. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, but inspiring people to look at it differently and to break down, come out completely from left field.
Retell the story. Yeah. Reframe the story.
Yeah.
Enlighten to the corporate agendas at work.
Yeah.
And create the political will. I'm not doing that. I don't. There are much better journalists and politicians who do that out there. I'm coming at it. I'm not here to. These books are not didactic. These books are not here to be political manifestos in a way that we've seen before.
Yeah.
I hope by building this new genre that I am that I am figuring this stuff out that makes sense to me.
Right.
And I'm inviting you all along.
Yeah.
On that journey.
Yeah. Yeah. So have you ever thought to paint a picture or map of California's climate futures, like looking at the IPCC reports?
Oh, for sure. For sure. I find that all of, well, at least a pretty consistent theme in all of my work following the California Field Atlas is going to be a documentation of global warming and climate breakdown as far as its local relevancy here in California. As a backpacker of California, I am seeing changes across the landscape with more and more regularness. And, I'm very sensitive to the power that maps hold. To get back to your original question there, that, I am choosing what is important to pay attention to, and asking you to trust me as a storyteller to follow me on that journey. As far as specific relevance to what you say, here, the Anthropocene, and you quoted me as talking about a fossil fueled fantasy here in this carbon-based economy, imagining then what a post-carbon economy might mean for us here in California and the rest of the world. I have been now on this book tour supporting the state of water for a few weeks, and I couldn't be more happy with the quality and of the audience that has come out to meet me, the community that has gathered around this book to support it. While at the same time, I sure have had many encounters with folks who really wonder where and how this potential conflict, or maybe not so potential conflict, realized conflict, this moment of where the wheels hit the road, we're changing our story, we're ushering in this new age, this new ecological paradigm towards our attitude as it is being imposed on us, maybe by what I called climate breakdown, and the decisions that we made in the previous century, in the 20th century, towards how people build and how are building and are living their lives now, specifically maybe in the realms of agriculture more than any other. I was just in Covelo, which is in Round Valley, which is up in Mendocino County, rural Mendocino County. And I was talking with a bunch of people who are living near the Eel River. And the Eel River is one of our great last wild and scenic rivers. There's some statistic about how more of the Eel River is protected as a wild and scenic river, our country's most stringent protection for rivers, than any other percentage of watercourse in California, any single watercourse. There are 2 dams on the Eel River. They're near the headwaters. There's the Scott Dam and the Pillsbury Dam, or it's Pillsbury Reservoir. It's not the Pillsbury Dam. But these are small-ish reservoirs. I mean, we're talking about 80,000 acre feet, which isn't, when you consider like Shasta Dam, our biggest dam, is over 3-point-something million acre feet. It sort of puts it into perspective. But these are little dams, and they are preventing the successful restoration of salmon, because they prevent salmon from making it to the headwaters from where they're from, and other anadromous fish as well. But there's a lot of questions about where we would like a restored environment where we have obsolete dams, like both of these dams don't have a ton of functionality. There is a diversion through the it's in the northern Mayacamas Mountains to the Russian River from behind the Scott Reservoir. So we're using water from one river to feed another river, and that's basically an agricultural solution for wine country downriver. But that's also taking the cold, fresh water from the headwaters of the Eel, another problem, right? This is a long, involved question. A lot of people are asking, well, we have these ecosystems that have been built up there over the past 100 years. What about those ecosystems now that they exist? Also, down at the bottom of those reservoirs, we have one guy said, we don't want to know what's at the bottom of those reservoirs. And he's right, because reservoirs are very good at leaching out water-soluble mercury, for example, incredibly dirty, potentially toxic, poisonous silt at the bottom of these reservoirs. And the human communities that have established themselves around recreation and other human uses for those reservoirs. So these are all very delicate, important discussion points to talk about how we shift the story, right, about how we talk about what restoration is, and about what quality of life and intact biodiversity we want for going forward into the next century. I mean, ultimately, we have an opportunity here to leave the 21st century with a California in better natural shape than we left it in the 20th century. So looking forward to that as a possibility, we have to take into factor all these very real concerns on the other end of this idea of restoring watersheds, for example. Like I just gave you a pretty lengthy, in-depth review of a particular circumstance, but there's fights like that across California, everywhere.
Yeah. I like the idea of restoration. Bring back the deep and intrinsic value of biodiversity. Bring back the salmon runs like you talk about in your writings. Like,
Can we engage that adaptive cycle once again as a model of how all life works?
Right.
And be integrated and only then will we find the sustainability that we desire. And it's only through that that kind of story shift will we be most likely to continue this conversation of our human residency here on this planet for the next 10,000 years.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a rewiring, but we've rewired ourselves before, given environmental, ecological input on a large enough time scale, and not a large enough time scale. The Industrial Revolution started one June afternoon in 1775 when James Watt turned on the first coal-powered steam engine and made the first industrial carbon emission. Nothing has been the same since, and I like that. I like that is linked up exactly by the year to when the Declaration of Independence in America was written. I mean, there are many parallels in history like that. And your podcast here, The Crossroads of History, if that wasn't one of the most important crossroads in all history, then. But we've got other ones too. I mean, now we've got Albert Einstein writing E = MC squared the same year that Pablo Picasso painted La Demoiselle d'Avignon, the cubist, the first cubist painting. The advent of modern art. These leaps in consciousness that seem unconnected, but are they?
Right. Yeah. 100%.
Towards this consilience, the unity of all knowledge.
Yeah. 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 No, I love that. So what story has most captivated you in the search of an inspiring vision for the future of the biosphere?
What story has most inspired me? I'm actually working on a series of it's a book list recommendation actually, for the summer of 2019 that you and I are speaking inside of, it's about 25 books. And it's this whole consilient idea of there's a lot of authors who come from a wide range of disciplines, including the arts and the sciences and journalism and whatnot. And I'll be posting that on my website, Coyote and Thunder, soon. But you can, as I'm on book tour, I'm really into books. I love supporting the independent bookstores across the state of California have been so supportive of me. I think that further reading is really important, especially when you're talking about water in California. I find that you're talking about worldview as much as you are water. So to really understand my little thin book that only comes in at 144 pages. So it's sort of defined by its conciseness and probably more importantly, what I left out as opposed to what I left in. I think if you access that list of books that really directly influence me in my writing, I mean, there are authors in there from E.O. Wilson, Rachel Carson, Elizabeth Kolbert, Kolbert, not Colbert, Kolbert. What else we got? We got lots of poets. We got Gary Snyder, Wendell Berry, Robin Wall Kimmerer, Annie Dillard, Naomi Klein. Many authors there. So check that out for as far as direct story goes.
That's wonderful. I just read Pilgrim at Tinker Creek recently.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's what you're thinking about with Annie Dillard, but that has been a huge, just like a totally inspiring prose piece.
One of the best for sure.
Past year. Yeah, just literally all the authors you just mentioned, but she's incredible. Yeah. So I was wondering, in your search for making a better world, if you could recommend a change for folks in lifestyle, introspection, interpersonal activism to our listeners, what kind of changes would you represent? Would you suggest?
I really appreciate that question. I don't know if I believe in a better world. The world is what the world is, and I think that on a macro level, on the scale that I mostly write at, I talk about biodiversity, trying to save every shred of it that we can, especially over this very unique place full of such rare and endemic living systems and beings, endemic being that they exist nowhere else on planet Earth. And I wonder on an individual level just how people are taking care of themselves. We talk about story, Keith. I think largely we tell ourselves bad stories, stories about being a productive, money-making consumer that involve us sitting in cars for several hours in the morning, only to go sit behind a computer for the entire day, and then to get back into that car for another couple of hours on the return trip. And I think that that's potentially a very dangerous story to tell oneself your whole life. I wonder sometimes when I see that kind of question come up when I'm giving talks, there's this sort of pleading in people's eyes, this sort of desperation. They're so caught up with social media and a 24-hour news cycle that suggests that everything's going to go to hell in the next 72 hours. That's not a good story. Unplug from that. Go to the forest, find a river, take your shoes off, put your feet in the river. This is we need you grounded and unpanicked. We need you clear. We need you connected. So that's step one. And then we can go into the 99,000 other things we need to do. But step one is go to a place, turn off your car, walk far away from your car, and then do what I just recommend. How about that?
Obi, that was an excellent advice.
Thank you, Keith. I really appreciate it too, man. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode. I'm looking forward to publishing our next meditation, A Life Decomposed, around September 15th. Tune in then to follow the story of a young Romani refugee as she explores themes of death, motherhood, and the interconnectedness of life. Continuing forward with the themes that we explored today on this show. Towards the end of the month, I will be publishing my interview with Stephen Zunes on the future of civil resistance, with a further interview with Daniel Schmachtenberger to follow in October. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time on Our Future on Wax and Wings.